What's up guys, welcome back to a new video. It's a miserable day out here, absolutely terrible. Just sold my last Cressida today, so got very wet loading it up onto the trailer. So anyway, here we are. Anyway, last week we had some bad news. I had a call from the machine shop where we sent this 2J to go and get machined, and they did the crack test after they cleaned up the block, and they found that it actually had hairline fractures on 4 of the head bolt holes. So between the head bolt holes and the water galleys, so around, you know, these areas that cracked in there, just hairline fractures. So the sort of thing in a 2J, it's very common on a RB, and we've seen, you know, 600 plus horsepower out of box that still have these cracks in them. So if it were less, you know, like a smaller caliber build, it wouldn't be a big problem. But given the fact that we are putting so much good gear in this engine, that we sort of want to start with a really good block to start with, so that the thing is, you know, fully has all the potential to be what it can be. So basically, that block is not going to suit this build, so we're going to go and retrieve that block. Now, at the moment, 2J blocks are getting fairly hard to find, also fairly expensive. So what we've decided to do is to help out the customer. We've got our personal 2J GE here, which for a lot of you that follow the channel will know, we had plans for this. We've got our 1J head here. We were going to do a 1.5 stock bottom end 1.5 for our VK Commodore and build something pretty crazy just out of a stock bottom end 2J. However, considering we're thinking about going stock bottom end anyway, we're only looking for that sort of 600-700, and you know, if we're building it for ourselves, we know the risk we're taking. It would be better for us to use the block that's got some hairline fractures. We're going to send this block down. Hopefully it's got no cracks, and we'll use this for the really big dollar high horsepower build that we're doing. Obviously we'll have to have, you know, there'll be a deal in there. We'll have a bit of a money exchange with the customer as well, selling our good block for his one that's cracked. But obviously you would have seen when we pulled that down, we had that one bent rod. I assume that motor hydraulic and bent that rod. So obviously when it did that, it must have done some damage to the head bolts around it. As we know, it's a fair bit of force to bend one of those GE rods, so that probably is what did it. This block, we've had a good look over the deck. It seems to be okay. There's no signs of any damage, so fingers crossed this block's alright, and we'll be back on our way to getting this motor together. So anyway, we're going to pull this down, get this block bare, and get it loaded up so I can go down to the machine shop next week.
I cried a river over you.
Alright, we are pulled down to a bare block, ready to send to the machine shop. Hopefully have some better luck with this one. Pulling this bottom end down, it was perfect. It was so awesome. This would have been the perfect stock bottom end to bolt our 1J head on and send in the VK. So if you're watching this, Todd, you're welcome. It's a real piss off. Ass. Anyway, we do what we can to help out our customers wherever. So it is what it is. Like I said, Todd's block with some hairline fractures for us making the sort of power we want to make shouldn't be an issue. And like I said, if it is an issue, we knew the risk we were taking. But when it comes to a full big dollar build like Todd's doing, putting big amounts of money into an engine, we need to make sure we start off with a block that's perfect. So fingers crossed this one's good. Just going over the deck, it looks fine, but then so did the other one, so we'll see. We'll see. So the plan will be to put this rotating assembly in the block that we get back from the machine shop, and we still got the main caps from that block in the box over there, so we can put them back on that block, new bearings, new rings, and then we can send that stock bottom end hopefully around sort of 6, maybe 700 wheel. We'll just see what happens with an auto in the VK, and hopefully this block can end up with our billet mains, our I-beams and our big dollar rotating assembly and go in Todd's car and make some good power. Anyway, that's all I have to show you for now. We'll load this into the car ready to go and we'll pick this video back up when we get some stuff back from the machine shop. Righto guys, so great success. We've got the 2J back from the machine shop. That block that we sent down, our personal block, was perfect. There was no problems with that, so that's a good outcome. So now we've got the crack block for our stock bottom end build, and Todd's got a good block for this this high horsepower build, which is the best outcome there is. So I did have some other work to do today, but holy frick, it's freaking hot as, so I decided to come in here into the aircon and do a little bit of work on the 2J today, or the 1.5J I should say. I've still got to order some Welsh plugs and stuff, so it's going to be a bit of a slow going build, but as with all high horsepower motors, they're always built with love and care, so they always take a little while. But anyway, I thought we'd go back to filming a little bit of stuff and you can see what the process is. So as far as our machining process, we've had the block honed, the deck surfaced, we've had it crack tested, acid dipped, we've had the crank crack tested and tested for straight, and it was straight. Being that it that number 5 hydraulic on the last motor, I wanted to make sure that it didn't affect the crank in any way. So the cranks come back perfect, which is awesome. We had the rods resized or resized accordingly, just checked. It's pretty important for new rods especially. Some brands are better than others with it, but a lot of rods, they come actually unfinished as far as the sizing goes, for good reason as well. So we've had them sized, and obviously we've had everything completely balanced. So the block was obviously torque plate honed and bored, and then obviously we also had the billet mains tunnel board as well. So everything's done, machine shop is that's all good. So it's just a matter of assembling all this now. I've been talking to Todd about what we're going to do with his head. He's still sort of trying to source parts as cheap as he can. I sort of gave up and passed him the bill because he has some pretty good hookups to get some stuff anyway, so I figured he'd pay for stuff when he's happy to pay for it and get it from people that he's happy to get it from. So I just sort of let him sort that out. So I'm pretty sure at this stage he's still going to get a set of 1mm oversized intake valves, because that's how big we can get out of the seats without having to change the seats in the head. So new guides all through the head, oversized valves on the intake side, and that should be that. So once he's sorted that out, I'll get the head sorted at our machine shop as well. But for now we're just going to get the bottom ends together. I've had a chat to Todd. Todd's, you know, he's pretty switched on. He just doesn't have the means to measure and do a bottom end to this caliber. So he is looking to sort of save money wherever he can. So the deal is I'm going to get this bottom end together for him, you know, all clearanced and together and done properly. We'll get the head machined and all together, back together for him properly, and then I'm just going to give him back the bottom end and the head. And Todd's going to finish doing the actual engine build as far as getting the head on the block and you know, getting all the ancillaries and everything else on it as well. So save him some money by doing that himself. So that's the deal. That's what we're going to be going with. So I would have been super stoked to do this full tune, but you know, we're not here trying to poach anyone. Todd's already got a really good relationship with a tuner of his own, who's tuned a lot of his cars and stuff. So I'm not looking to stand in the way of any of that sort of thing. And yeah, plus like I said, we've had over 1,000 wheel on that dyno before. Before we owned it. We know, you know, it is rated as a single retarder. I'm pretty sure it is rated to 11 or 1200 horsepower that we can do, but you know, 1100, you know, 1000 horsepower from an LS based car is very different to, you know, 1000 horsepower 3 litre inline 6, and the way that the power comes on is sort of the problem. So trying to get that sort of power delivery into the rollers where it's not losing traction or causing issues is pretty difficult. So definitely hub dyno is a good idea. It's definitely on our list of things we would love to get one day. However, we'll deal with the chassis dyno for now. But anyway, we'll film some of this going together, and it'll be a pretty cool build. Looking forward to it. Nice and shiny parts. So I thought I'd just film the first two so you get an idea of the process that goes on. And I've just been going through actually just putting all the rods together now. And an interesting development. So with the spool rods, with what comes with the rods that gives you your recommended torque specification, they actually recommend that you use the Arp Assembly Lube or fastener lubricant. So this is like a moly based lube. Now a lot of companies like Compstar and stuff, they don't actually recommend you use this for their rods anymore, for their rod bolts. They actually give you this, which is a little bit of a different sort of fastener lubricant. So this is like a proper extreme pressure paste rather than a moly sort of lube. And so I went through putting all of the rods together with the bearings in them using the Arp torque or fastener lubricant, and doing down to their specified 75 foot-pounds. I found consistently that they were coming back at about 4 thou stretch, which is, you know, we sort of aim for our 5 thou of stretch on these things. So consistently, didn't seem to matter how much of that moly lube that I was using, consistently 4 thou stretch. So for the last one, I thought just as a means of an experiment, I'll use some of that stuff that we get from Compstar, and sure enough, that same lubricant, same torque wrench, same torque, 75 foot-pound, bang on 5 thou stretch. So it's interesting how much difference that actually makes. So anyway, when these go back together for the final time, I'll definitely be using that extreme pressure sort of paste, not the moly based. I hadn't planned to use the moly based one anyway. I was just doing it for the process of the bearing clearances, because I don't like using the other stuff, because I'm pretty sure we only get it from Compstar, so we're always running short of it, whereas the actual Arp stuff, we literally have truckloads of it. So I try and use that for all the temporary stuff so we don't go through the other stuff, but I might have to look at trying to get a supplier and start sourcing that. Anyway, the way these are going, it's looking like I might have to tighten them up a bit, so I might have to get some new bearings anyway, but I just thought I'd document that so you can see. Anyway, now that they're all together, I'll go through and do the rest of my clearances and see what we come out with. Alright, so I finished up the rod bearing clearances. Some of these are a little bit looser than I would like. Unfortunately, given the sizes that you can buy bearing shells in, I'm not going to get exactly. I'm really picky with clearancing, obviously, being an engine builder. And for the sizes that you can buy bearing shells in, I don't think I'm going to be able to achieve exactly what I want to anyway. So what we do in this situation is we try swapping some bearing shells from some of the looser clearance ones into the tighter ones to try and see if we can even out some of the clearances. Again, you're talking thousandths of an inch, which is literally 0.025 millimeters. This is tiny measurements. So when you're talking about, 2, 3, 0.2, 0.3 thou, you're really splitting hairs. But it makes all the difference in these engines. So what I'm going to have to do, considering I can't buy the bearing shells that I need to do what I want to do, I'll have to go back through and swap some of these around and see what I can get. But the actual crank journal sides, absolutely spot on, very consistent, so a very good crank. So anyway, I'll crack some of these back open and swap some stuff around and try again. I should probably elaborate on that a little bit more. So when you buy bearing shells, you can buy them in a standard size, you can buy them in 1 thou undersize, 10 thou undersize, which is like your first grind. I'm pretty sure for some engines you can get a second grind, which is a 20 thou undersize, but for a lot of engines that don't really bother, particularly in performance engines, because once you're starting to grind a crank that far, it's starting to get a bit... Most cranks, you only want to get one grind out of them. Anyway, regardless. You can also buy bearings in 1 thou oversize. This is for like super high RPM engines where they want to get more clearance on a standard size. So given that you can only buy bearing shells in 1 thou increments, even if you used a half shell from a standard set and a half set from a 1 thou undersized set, you're only getting an extra half a thou, or you're only losing half a thou of clearance. So at the end of the day, when you're doing clearances, that's what you're limited to, is a half thou increment. You can't get any smaller than a half thou increment, which honestly, like I said, you're starting to split hairs. It's getting pretty ridiculous. So that's where I'm at, is where I'm a little bit looser than I'd like to be on some of them. but going to a 1/2 thou smaller is going to be too tight for what I want to do. So that's where I'm at with that. I just thought I'd elaborate on that a bit more, where even if I used 1/2 thou undersized, or even if I used 1 thou undersized bearing shell and one standard, I'm tightening it up 1/2 thou, and that's going to be too tight. So that's where we're at. So anyway, like I said, I'll pull these apart and switch them around and see what we can do. Righto guys, so I swapped a few shells around. I still haven't managed to get where I want to be. It honestly didn't change very much. It seems like the bearings are actually probably quite consistent. It's either the rod sizing. There's two in particular which have come back way, sort of quite a bit looser than I would like them. So, alright guys, so today working on the mains, trying to get some clearances for the mains so that we know exactly what we need to order as far as new bearings goes. So definitely going to try and chase up those rod bearings, but I need to make sure whether the mains are going to be okay, whether I need to do a similar sort of setup with the mains. So, same sort of process, go through, measure the mains, see what we come back with.
like a big ass tornado just spinning around all over the place, sucking things up into it.
What's up guys, it's been a little while, but obviously not for you because it's in succession in the video, but we're back working on the 1.5J. Now it's been a little while because this whole build's not really been much of a rush job because of the way that I'm allowing the owner of the motor, Todd, to sort of try and source his own parts from all his weird avenues where he can get stuff because he can get it real cheap sort of thing, but it takes ages. So I've sort of just been allowing him to get stuff as we need it. So, you know, at this point we're still waiting on stuff for his head. His head's still at the machine shop, so there's not really been any urgency to get it together. At this point, I really just want to get the bottom end together so that there's more room in the engine room for us to do stuff. So finally dragged it all back out. Spent a little bit of time just cleaning up all of the Welsh Plugs sort of bosses. So they're all ready for our Welsh Plugs, which I tried to get some genuine Toyota ones, which has not come about. So we're just going to go put a set of the brass ones from Golby's in there, and hopefully they'll be all right. I'm confident they would, just it would have been nice to use genuine Toyota, but you get that sometimes. So they're ready to go in. We're going to do some ring gap at the moment. Like I said, we've got our our 1 thou undersized bearings, so we can use some half shells to get the rods all right. So at the moment I just want to do some ring gaps for today, get started on these Welsh Plugs, and then tomorrow we can sort out our bearing clearances and finally get this rotating assembly together. So that's the plan. So this is our little setup for ring gapping that we've got set up. So this is our ring gap filer. We use a drill because we're lazy. This is a piston I've dug out just to get the rings square in the bores. All of our rings, obviously, and our feeler gauges to get our correct gap, and our block, which I've just dragged out and cleaned up all the bores because I'm going to be putting it together soon now. So when we have blocks that sit for quite a while, we've got a special coating that we coat them over. And I'll tell you what, it's a friggin' pain in the ass to clean up. But anyway, you got to do what you got to do. So this is pretty much cleaned up, ready for us to get going. So let's do some ring gap. Now ring gap for this motor is going to be fairly loose. Not like loose for what it is, but just loose because it's going to be running quite a bit of boost, this thing. So we're looking at probably over 30 pound of boost. So as you can imagine, fair bit of ring gap we're going to need. So. So now that I've got all the ring gaps, this next thing is something that I think is quite important that a lot of people actually miss. And this here is just a really, really tiny, very, very fine file. It's very, very fine. And what I actually do is I go over the ring and I file all of the edges of the ends of the rings, just to make sure there's no sharp edges nor dags or anything like that hanging out. Just to clean up those edges, make sure they're not, there's no sharp parts for hot spots or anything like that. So just do that with a very, very fine file on all rings. And then they'll get cleaned with some brake clean, put into their cylinder bags, and I'll go onto the second rings, which I make a little bit bigger. So there you go there, that's what you have at the end. Might be a bit hard to see there on camera, but just a perfect little baby chamfer on all edges of the ring. And you can slide your fingernail off anywhere on the ring and it just glides off. It doesn't catch, it doesn't do anything. So it's a pretty well-known fact. A lot of people already know that have anything to do with engines is you always file a ring towards the center so that there's not a lip on the ring that faces the bore, so that you don't end up with a lip on the back or the outside of the ring that drags up and down the bore. But what you end up, if you have a lip on the inside, is you end up with the potential for the ring to get stuck in the ring groove of the piston, which presents its own issues if it's not actually able to freely move you know, around the bore while the engine's running. So it's equally important, I believe, for both ends not to have any sort of spots. So I might spend anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes per ring just doing this, which makes what is already a very long and tedious job very, very long and tedious, but it's the little attention to detail things like this which separate a good engine from a great engine, I believe. So, alright, so I've just gapped up all the second rings. These ones don't usually take a lot less time than the top rings because they're usually made of a much softer material. But the reason that we always gap the second ring bigger than the top ring is because what can happen is you have a tendency to get what we get ring chatter, or you know, ring flutter is another term for it, which is where compression will actually get past the top ring on the piston and get caught in between the top and the second ring. And what can happen is if that gets bad enough, it can actually unseat the top ring, which is absolutely not what you want. So you want to ensure that your second ring is gapped a lot, well, not a lot, but a fair bit bigger than your top ring to allow compression to actually, once it passes the top ring, to actually pass the second ring as well. The last thing you want is to get that compression caught between the two rings there. Alright, so the last thing is the actual rails for your oil control ring, which is another thing that is often overlooked, but it is also very important. If these don't have enough gap, you're going to end up with all sorts of oil control issues, which is going to affect your bores in the long run. So you need to ensure that your bores can be adequately oiled, otherwise you're going to, you know, prematurely wear your bores and wear your rings, and it's no fun. So it is very, very important. So anyway, I'm going to make sure we've got at least sort of 15 thou on each of the oil retainer rails, and that should be plenty for what we want to do. Alrighty guys, so now it's time to get in all of our core plugs or freeze plugs or Welsh plugs, whatever you want to call them. Just use a little bit of stag on these. It's just a jointing paste. It's actually a steam sealer, so it seals with steam and heat, which is really good for things like this. So all we do is get a socket that sort of fits inside the plug, but not tight, because these do compress as you hammer them in. So if your socket's actually only just fits in there, you will get it stuck once you've knocked the plug in. You won't be able to get the socket back out. It's a trick for new players, but anyway. So I've cleaned all these up with a blade and some Scotch-Brite, the same way I would do, you know, a gasket surface that hadn't been machined, sort of thing. So they're nice and clean and smooth as a baby's bum. So we've got our brass plugs here from Golby's. So go ahead and knock them all in. I'm just going to wait. The one at the back I'm going to do last, because when Rex gets back I'll get him to give me a hand to get the block off and sit it on this face so that I can do them at the back there. The other thing is these two little balls that have to go in the front here. I'm going to knock those in. I've got new ones of those as well. So those are for your oil galleys. They block your oil galleys. And I had the machine shop actually tap the rear too, so we don't have balls to put back in the back ones there. They're actually grub screws now, which is much better. So just makes it way better serviceability. You know, if something was to happen and Todd wanted to rebuild again later on down the track for whatever reason, you can pull the motor out, pull them 2 grub screws out, knock the 2 balls out from the back. Easy as that. Bottle brush your oil galleys, where without those plugs machined and tapped into the back, you've got to like weld something onto the balls to get them out. It's nightmarish. It's a pain in the ass. So yeah, I always get the machine shop to do that as well. As you can see, we need a bigger engine room these days. It's getting small. Alright, so we'll get our 2 grub screws in and the rear Welshie. All the other Welshies are in and it's looking bloody beautiful. So, back on the stand it goes. Alright. Got our balls in the front. There's all the important stuff plugged up, looking great. So, it's going to be the 2J block. Anyway guys, that's where we'll call this episode, and I'm going to go home and have some dinner and go to bed. So tune in for the next episode where we'll be finally getting our bearing clearances where we actually want them, and we'll finally actually start getting this bottom end together, and then we'll probably, hopefully by then, have our head back and we can reassemble our head, which would be great because it'd be nice to have all of this room back in the engine room. It's been a little while this thing's been apart. Again, like I said, it's just because Todd's been trying to get stuff on his own to try and save money. You know, for someone like us, we have our suppliers, we know what we want to do. For us, it's just, hey, gonna order this, call up, whatever. For someone like Todd, if he wants to save himself a couple of dollars here and there by getting it himself, that's okay. It's not really been a big deal to us. It's not really hindered us much at all, so I don't really mind. But yeah, it's gonna be nice to get this together, get it out of here, get this back. Woo. Anyway, thanks for watching guys. Tune in for the next one. Smash the like, smash subscribe, and we'll see you then. Peace out, see you, bye.